and I want to welcome you to this first installment of our Forest Landowner webinar series. My name is Lisa Sawsville, and I'm the Executive Director of Vermont Coverts Woodlands for Wildlife. We, along with the Vermont Department of Forest, Parks, and Recreation, the Vermont Fish and Wildlife Department, Vermont Woodlands Association, Audubon Vermont, and the Vermont Natural Resources Council, we're all partners in this Forest Landowner Outreach Project, and we're working together to bring this webinar series and other resources to you. This project is aimed to equip landowners, and especially new landowners, with the knowledge, support, and resources that they need to be good stewards of their forest land. Many of you have heard already, with approximately 85% of Vermont's forest in private ownership, it is the choices made by you, landowners, that are really integral to the long-term health and integrity of our woodlands. And there are many ways for you to steward your land. You might be interested in enhancing wildlife habitat, managing for recreation or timber, lowering your property taxes by enrolling in the current use program, or maybe you want to have a conservation easement on your property. So there's something here for everyone. In addition to this webinar series, we've developed a landowner's guide to help you navigate and assist you in your stewardship journey. This guide, along with a companion decision-making roadmap, is going to be available shortly, both in print and on our partner website. And you're going to look for that website in the chat. Alex is going to put that in the chat. The website is already sort of up, but we're working on getting those other resources up there for you. And the guide is being printed. So that's something that we can send you. We're really excited. We're also offering through this grant direct consultation and technical assistance to up to 100 landowners. This is at no cost to you, and you can find more details about this on the website as well. So that's kind of a lot of the housekeeping stuff. So let's get to today. Today, we're joined by Mike Snyder, who's a consulting forester with Greenfire Enterprises, and he's going to be sharing about the ins and outs of understanding a forest management plan. Previously, Mike was the commissioner of the Department of Forest, Parks, and Recreation, and before that, he was a county forester. So he has a really great understanding of what a forest management plan is and what it isn't. So at this point, I'm going to say, take it away, Mike.
Thanks, Lisa. Greetings, everyone. Thanks for being here. As Lisa says, today we're going to demystify forest management plans, what they are, how they're made, and most importantly, how to read one, how to interpret and implement one. And my goal is simple, that you would feel after today, that if not already, you'd feel comfortable opening a plan and knowing where to start. Speaking of starting, let me start with a quick comparison. As Lisa said, I've been a forester here in Vermont for nearly 40 years, and I've worked with a lot of landowners over the years, and they tend to fall into two broad categories. Landowners are as varied as as could be, and they vary with their land and with their backgrounds. But two broad categories, it seems to me, would be one type of landowner has a forest, and they make decisions as things come up. Say a logger calls, a trail needs work, something blows down. The decisions get made, and they're reactive. The other landowner type, broadly speaking, is the one who has a plan. They also have a forest, but they have a plan. So when those same moments come up, they're not starting from scratch or being reactive. They already know some key things like what they care about, what they're trying to move toward, and what makes sense to do next. The forest may look similar in the short term, but over time, the outcomes tend to diverge among these two broad types. So today, that is really about helping you be in that second category, having a forest, but also having a plan. Next slide, please. Thank you, Alex. So what we're going to do is follow this simple path. First, what a plan is, some basics. Second, how a plan gets made. And third, how to read your plan. We'll spend most of our time, I think, on that third part because that's where this becomes most useful. So a plan, you can advance the slide, I believe. A forest plan, management plan, really is two things at once. It's certainly a written document, and it's important to to have a plan that's not just in your head, but written down. And we'll come up, we'll discuss a couple of reasons for why that's important. So it's a document, but it's also a process, a way of thinking and understanding, and importantly, making decisions over time. Good plans connect what we do today with what we want the forest to become in the future. And they work something as a cycle. You start by identifying your goals, take some inventory to get to a better understanding of the forest itself. This leads to what we call prescriptions, or statements of activity and goals for action. Importantly, that implementation is accompanied by some monitoring. We pay attention to what we've done and how it might be working out, and then we feed that back into our process for any necessary revisions. So that in this way, a plan is not static. The plan evolves. Next slide, please. So why have a plan? It's really, the reason to have a plan is simple. And not just because for, say, the current use program, you're required to have one. Forests are incredibly complex. They're characterized by variability, by dynamism, change. They're complex. And so with something that complex, it's relatively easy to make long-lasting mistakes. And a written, thoughtful plan helps avoid those mistakes. A plan helps to organize what we know, what we want, what's maybe been done in the past, and importantly, what comes next. One of the biggest benefits is continuity. Forests outlast us. Ownership changes. Goals shift. A plan, a good, solid forest management plan, helps keep things moving in a coherent direction. Next slide, please. All good plans share a few core ingredients. Essentially, a plan is four things. It's one, a statement of the owner's goals, objectives, purposes, values. Second, a plan includes a descriptive assessment of what the forest is and its sort of ecological capabilities. Third, a plan includes a detailed schedule of recommended activities. And the fourth component of a plan, in addition to landowners' goals, the forest's capabilities, a list of actions, the fourth is a graphic representation, also known as what? A map. Yes. So a good plan, any good plan, they can vary, but they all have those things: a statement of clear statement of goals, a solid understanding of the forest and its ecology, maps that match the narrative, and a schedule of work. So a simple test then is, if someone new could arrive at a forest, pick up a plan, read the plan, and make a reasonable decision, then that's a good plan. If no, we need to work on that plan. Next slide, please. Again, there are different kinds of plans. Not every plan is necessarily the same. Some are quite comprehensive. Some are really more philosophy statements and management guidelines. And then some are what we might call an activity or a practice plan. They're focused on a specific action, a short-term objective. And in my experience, the best plans kind of combine all three. There's a comprehensive plan that includes management guidelines and statements of philosophy of ownership, and they also include activity or plans that include practices. So when someone says, we have a plan, it's important to drill in and figure out, determine which kind of plan and what level of decision making it supports. Next slide. Advance the slide, please. Not sure if we're having a technical glitch here. There we go. So then how does a plan get created? Most plans follow these three basic steps. There you go. Identifying the forest, understanding the purposes and goals, what the landowners or the stakeholders involved may want. We tend to refer to landowners, thinking generally about private land ownership, but of course there are public lands and say town forests where it's the owners are the townspeople, say, but we might think of them more as stakeholders. In either case, those are important players in the purposes and goals setting. And then the third component would be deciding what to do based on those first two things. It's kind of simple in concept, but each step matters and is worth spending some time with. Next slide, please. Most often, we'll start with a forester. Now, I've worked with plenty of landowners over the years who have who were quite into it, committed to learning and to being involved. And I've worked with plenty who have created their own forest management plans. And that's a beautiful and wonderful thing. Many times, folks reach out to various professionals for some added expertise. And I just want to make a placeholder there that it is possible to do your own plan. Most folks actually start with a forester, qualified, in this state, licensed professional who can either assist or, in fact, do the soup to nuts in communication with the landowner, as opposed to a forester just telling the landowner what to do. This begins with a conversation. And the forester plays this important role of integrating a variety of disciplines, from understanding the vegetation, soils, hydrology, habitats, and the critters that may be using the land, and then trying to integrate those disciplines and help translate landowner goals into workable actions. So a good forester, in other words, helps translate goals into actions that actually work on the ground. And importantly, they've usually implemented plans, not just written them. So they've got the whole sort of soup to nuts history and experience and can bring that to any given landowner or parcel of land. We'll come back to some discussion of how to choose a forester, but let's move on now to the next slide to continue the basic overview of what forest management plans are. Critical first step once deciding to head down the road of creating a plan is to do that important piece of identifying the forest, understanding the current conditions, and kind of the places within the place. In this inventory and assessment step, you and your forester would be documenting the soils, the vegetation, the water, habitat, things like access and other practical implications. But conceptually, it's about identifying the forest into its component parts. This brings us to the next slide, which is to illustrate that it's really helpful and quite common in practice to produce from an inventory a description of the forest that breaks it into smaller components. The example Matt said on the left shows a parcel outlined and with a few broad polygons that are called stands or management areas. We'll come back and drill into what a stand is a little bit further later, just to reset. But a stand is a portion within a forest that has some characteristics that are similar to them internally and maybe differ from other areas within the forest. So they may have similar stand types or natural community types. They may be differentiated based on access. This side of the forest we can get to from town road such and such, and the other side of the forest we have to access from a different town road perhaps. So any number of characteristics can be used to break the forest into smaller working components that we call stands or management areas or zones, but it's really helpful. And then an inventory, not just drawing the lines on the map, but the inventory then would be broken down and summarized by stand. So stand one would be described in the plan in great detail as to its soils, vegetation, history, forest health, and your goals for that stand. And stand 2 and stand 3 and stand 4 and so on would similarly be described through that inventory process and written in the plan. In this way, it serves as kind of a table of contents. Each stand has its own section for the forest. Next slide, please. Once we understand the forest, generally we then ask, well, what do we want from this forest? Sometimes that's really a beginning question and it leads to the development of a plan, and it can actually organize and kind of frame the inventory procedure. So I would say step 2 happens at the very beginning, and then it happens here again at step 2. Once you have a full description of, again, I like to say the ecological capabilities of the forest, let's now overlay onto that. Well, what would we want from? We meaning the landowner. This is the why that everything else should trace back to. Usually the answer is multiple things, and that's good. It can be timber, it can be habitat, recreation, water, aesthetics, privacy. The key is not to limit yourself, but just to make those goals explicit and to be clear about these any number of goals that you have for your property. Next up. Then we take those goals and we consider translating our kind of values of our ownership into measurable work that you can schedule and evaluate. So we're going from goals to objectives, ultimately to get to actions that are about stewarding the property in a way that reflects its ecological capabilities and your interests as owner. It's important then when you're looking at a plan, reading it and interpreting it, particularly for implementation, is to ask, can I trace this recommendation back to a goal I care about? So if it's calling for some activity, you want to understand what is that activity? That's an important step, but also to then be clear that yes, in fact, and confirm that it does reflect your goals and objectives, that it's an activity that will lead to you meeting your objectives in a way that's consistent with what the ecology can allow. Next slide. Next up, then, with that information, we get into real actionable items when we make recommendations, again, organized by stand, by year of action, and to some extent by priority. Importantly here, prescriptions and activities within a schedule, they can be for more than one thing. Sometimes it really is directed at, well, let's fix the erosion on that old skid trail. But that might come as, well, we're going to do that when we're cutting some firewood in stand 2. And we're going to cut that firewood in stand 2 in a way that is informed by and advances our interests in some habitat features, say for a featured species of wildlife. Perhaps it's songbird habitat or game species habitat. But so the point here is that this is where things they can seem maybe complicated, that we're trying to do multiple things or serve multiple masters through one activity. And that's okay. And this is, again, to reinforce why it's so important to have it actually written down in a plan, because then you can keep track and understand that we're doing this action and we're meeting multiple goals by doing so, and we're keeping track. Next slide, please. So, how to interpret your plan. Many of you here today likely already have a plan. Perhaps you're very familiar with it, perhaps not. You may have even inherited it from a previous landowner, or perhaps you've had it made some years ago and haven't had reason to be engaged with it. So, here's a kind of a checklist for regardless, generally for first-time plan readers, but um, start with understanding some basics. Who gets to make the decisions? When was the plan written and last updated? Is it current? Trees grow, storms affect stand structure and species composition. Activities certainly do. And so we want to make sure we have a current plan. And then, is there a clear articulation of the goals and values for your stewardship of the property? Can you boil them down to the top 3 to 5 goals? Do you have sufficient maps that are accurately displaying boundaries, stand delineations, water features, access for recreation and or management? Um, that's just sort of taking stock of your plan and understanding what its elements are. But then we want to dig deeper, understand how the inventory and assessment was created, typically through plots of a timber cruise, habitat assessments, more and more use of remote sensing, aerial photography, LiDAR, GPS. And then we want to get into, okay, if we're pretty sure it's accurate and current and reflective of a good, robust process, then what is it calling for? Does it call for prescriptions or treatments or recommended activities in each stand? And what is the schedule for those recommended treatments? Um, what are the caution signs for using best practices to protect soils and water features, habitat attributes? And then giving some thought to how you will measure success, keep track of activities, and monitor your actions with any consideration for changes in the next iteration of your plan. Because plans do get updated. Generally, we write plans for 10, 15, 20-year planning horizons, and certainly in current use, plans have to be updated every 10 years. Next slide, please. So then what? Well, then we get to implement, staying on top of it. So that's back to this idea of implementing as prescribed and tracking whether whatever work you did had the intended effect, um, and or do you need to modify for the next round? A plan then this way really only matters if it's used. So 2 habits then keep it alive: monitoring and adaptation. So what happened and what needs to change? I can't stress these enough, as often it's a big undertaking to create a plan. And I think there's a tendency to say, phew, I did that. Now I have a plan. Now let's live life, enjoy our forest. I can't stress enough the need to stay on top of what happened and what needs to change, if anything. Forests change. They do, whether we're involved or not. Certainly when we are, um, your plan needs to change as well. Next slide. I just wanted to circle back to this idea of a forest stand and to be more clear it really is the basis of most, all forest plans are broken down by stand, so it's important to understand. And you have a choice in how you delineate stands. Simply, it's an area within your forest with similar tree species, similar age and structure, similar management needs or objectives, similar access. So again, it's these areas within that share certain features that you decide, and then that are distinct from other areas within the forest. And so again, we foresters use stands to simplify and kind of take piece by piece areas of the forest that make sense to make recommendations tailored by place. Prescriptions that are written stand by stand, and it kind of breaks it down, makes things easier to read, to understand, and to keep track of. This is how plans actually become practical. Before we head off into the fun zone of question and answer, and welcome in some help in the conversation, I want to just cover a couple things that come up over and over that are, I might call common misunderstandings about forest management plans. A plan is not simply an order to cut trees or to create some rigid schedule that is just one and done. And instead, a plan is a decision framework, a reference document, and a guide to long-term stewardship. And it's a living document, as we've tried to stress here. Um, Without a plan, let's move to the next slide, actually, please. You can certainly go it without a plan. Not if you want to be in, say, a program like Current Use that requires a plan written to certain standards and with oversight. But if you just want to go and do your thing, you certainly can. What we've seen over time, though, is without a plan, decisions do indeed tend to be reactive. You tend to be surprised and you discover constraints too late down the road. Similarly, you might miss opportunities. With a plan, things tend to be a lot clearer, with fewer surprises and better communication. More control, in other words. Next up. Important, forester is your agent working for you and the land, often between you, acting as agent between you and the land and, say, a logging contractor. This person works for you, with you, to advance your interests, as well as to bring their expertise about the land and what's possible and how to cook up a happy coexistence. So this is a relationship between you and a professional. And you want to be looking for someone you can work with. Certainly, you want someone with relevant experience and qualification. In this case, in this state, we need a license to practice forestry and offer forestry services. You want someone who represents your interests and who communicates clearly and does so in a way that works for you. This can be highly personal. It's over the long term. It may transcend generational timelines. And so for that continuity, it's very important to choose a forester that's going to work well with you and for you. It can be a really an important and powerful, long-lasting relationship. Frankly, as a forester, this has been my favorite part, is developing those long-term relationships with people and their land, focused on their land and their stewardship of their land. I would also encourage you to remember we're just humans and you're the owner and you're in charge. So ask good questions and don't hesitate to be in charge, but trust your forester. Next slide. Next up, we're going to head into a sort of open it up for questions. If you have a plan or you're thinking about generating one, I'd be glad to, with others here, talk you through it, answer specific questions. With that, I guess I want to circle back quickly to where we started, or my comment at the beginning. Remember those two landowners, one making a decision as things come up, the other working from a plan. Over time, what tends to separate them isn't luck. That winging it landowner and the planner landowner, they're separated not by luck, it's clarity. Clarity about what they care about, clarity about what they're trying to move toward, clarity about what to do next, who to do it with. And a forest management plan simply is a document based on a process that is really just a tool for creating that clarity, a clarity that helps people make better decisions about their forests and what they care about. I hope that's been helpful. Thank you again, and I'll pass it over to Lisa to help us to guide us through our question and answer session.
That sounds great, Mike. Thanks. So all of you out there, if you have any questions, please type them into the chat. If you are a landowner who's just here, but you've had a forest management plan, you kind of feel like you understand it. What were your questions when you first became a landowner or first started looking at that forest management plan? Because we really want these questions. Before we get into those questions, I want to highlight here that Tessa McGann has joined us. Tessa is a county forester for Bennington and Southern Rutland County, and she administers in that area the current use program and works with forest management plans and landowners all the time. If you live in that area, this is your county forester who you would call to come walk your property with you, as Mike had mentioned earlier. So Tessa's here to kind of chime in for any questions or any points that she'd like to make, and just be here as a support person who kind of, so here you have on the screen a consulting forester, which Mike talked about different types of foresters, and a county forester. So these are some of the resources that you would be using. Tessa, you can say hi if you want, if you have anything you want to add, but you don't have to feel like you have to add much.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Yeah, please, we are, Lisa just mentioned, foresters are here for you to use to help you in your stewardship journey. Please utilize us, county foresters especially. For anyone who has a plan or will have a plan, if you want help interpreting your plan, we would love to help you with that. I would love for more forest owners to really understand what's in that document, especially people who just have it for sort of to meet the requirements of UVA, but haven't spent time with it. We just would love to talk you through it and answer questions. So please reach out to me or your respective county foresters. I think we have links in the chat about that. But in the meantime, happy to dig into questions you have now as well.
Great. So there's a couple in the chat, so I'm going to read those, and I have some that were sent in earlier that I have also. So we're going to start with Elliot's. It says, we're new landowners who've inherited a current use stewardship plan. We're interested in exploring the reserve forest land option under current use, and they want to know who determines whether their stands qualify and what makes them qualify.
I can take that one because it's us, it's the county foresters who ultimately will review your plan and make the call about whether or not you qualify. But there's gray area before that, because the ultimate determination happens when we have the plan written. And I'm sure you want to have a good idea of whether you're going to hire a forester to write that in-depth plan. You'd probably want to know if you have an idea of whether or not you qualify beforehand. But a good place to start, as usually, is reaching out to your county forester, and we can look at the map of your parcel and talk to you about how it's looking at this point. We might be able to come and take a walk with you and make an initial help you understand sort of initially what's going on your land and whether you might qualify. And then from there, we would have conversations with you and maybe your forester as well. But to qualify for that, I mean, we can get into the weeds with it, but if your parcel is under 100 acres, 50% of it has to be in sensitive or significant conditions. So these are or steep slopes. So special places, riparian places, vernal pools, really, really high quality, exemplary natural communities, things like that. And if your parcel is over 100 acres, 30% of it has to exist in those conditions. So I'll also say we have a layer online, a mapping layer that can give you a first idea, and reach out to your county forester and we can help you understand that too. It's a good place to start.
Thanks, Tessa. Anything to add, Mike?
No, Tessa's got it there. It's knowable is what I'd say. And as Tessa's added, there's a tool for sort of seeing some basics there, and that's a very helpful start. Certainly your consulting forester can get you started, but yes, the county forester is ultimately the one who is tasked with the responsibility of confirming eligibility, and it's based on preponderance of those significant features. And then within that, you do have, maybe it's worth saying, Tessa, that, what does it mean once you're in the reserve category? You still have to have a plan. You still have to take care of the place. You just don't have to follow the normal timber production kind of guidelines, but it's important to know that you still do need that forest management plan and to take care of the place.
And I think that touches on a really important idea. You had that misconception that a management plan is just a mandate to harvest or just a cutting plan, and it's so much more than that. And I think it's essential for anyone who wants to pay attention to their forest and find out how we can be good, not just stewards, but good partners with our forest land and our wildlife neighbors. I think a forest plan can encompass all of that with or without cutting. So, yeah.
Elliot, I see your hand raised, so it sounds like you want to expand on this question. Go ahead and unmute yourself and ask.
quick follow-up if I could. This layering tool you mentioned, how do we find that?
It's on the ANR Atlas. If you search Vermont ANR Atlas, that's a whole webinar worth of information. I love the ANR Atlas. Very fun to play around with, but there's a lot of, you can find your property. It's a map of Vermont. You can zoom in, see your property lines. And then on the left side of the screen, there are a lot of different layers that you can toggle on or off to see all kinds of things about the natural resources in Vermont. But under the FPR, Forest Parks and Recreation category, at the bottom, there's a reserve forest land layer. So if you're taking notes, you should be able to find it, and then it will show in different colors, sort of the basic areas that we've mapped as being riparian or steep slopes or sensitive conditions. It doesn't cover everything, but it's a good place to start.
Great,
And on
thank
June
you.
10th, we're going to be having Covers is having a program with Jens Hilke from Fish and Wildlife on BioFinder and the ANR Atlas and Vermont Conservation Design and what all those things are and mean. So put that in the calendar. And I will say too that, you can manage the forest reserve ideas that you want kind of this old growth characteristics and you can also manage for those old growth characteristics even if your land doesn't qualify. So there's a lot of different ways, and that's where your county forester can come in. And Elliot, if you don't know who your county forester is, I see that Alex put in the chat the link to the map, and this is for everybody to determine who your county forester is. So that's kind of a resource there for you. So another question, do forest management plans written for current use vary from those that are not?
I'll start with this one if you'd like. They can. So as I tried to outline, all forest management plans worth anything share basic core ingredients: statement of goals, values, objectives, description of the forest and its ecology, your desires, and sort of combining those two into some action plan, and then a map to keep track. Current use has specific standards for how do you articulate what you're interested in? What elements of the forest need to be written down and quantified and described? And then certain activities need to be described in certain ways that give clarity, public accountability, that sort of thing. So current use has specifications and standards that really are pretty standard across all plans. If you're not writing a plan for current use, you don't necessarily have to follow all those standards, and they can have some stylistic differences. And say if you're writing a plan for the Natural Resources Conservation Service, it's going to have its own standards and similar language, but might have a few things that it wants it in a certain format or a certain way. So I guess the answer is they vary. Plans that are not written for current use often vary, but only, how would you say this, Tessa? I don't know. They have there are different standards for different programs, but really any plan is going to have those basic elements, and they're going to vary in the required standards or certain language that's required. I hope that makes sense.
I think that captures it. I'm not sure how much more I would add. I think a lot of it would be stylistic too at this point. UVA is putting out some new standards, including, how information is ordered and presented, and we're getting pretty detailed with that to make review a lot faster and easier so that we county foresters have more time to be out in the woods with you. So there'd be stylistic differences there, but a lot of the core information, I believe, should be the same across UVA and non-UVA plans.
One thing I've noticed is that, sometimes I think, oh boy, current use, they're really asking for all this information. I've seen plans that are kind of like coffee table books that go into great detail. They're wonderful. Current use does not require that level of detail. They're kind of the nuts and bolts in a very detailed and organized way. And so that's another way that plans can vary. If you're in a carbon offset program, you're going to have other requirements. but many people really enjoy kind of the natural history descriptions that go into great detail. That's the sort of coffee table version with multiple different maps. Current uses ask for one, a basic map. So you can have some plans that go into extreme detail and are really fun to look at, that go well beyond what's required in current use.
That sounds great. I'm going to follow up with one question and then go skip one and then come back to it. So the follow up to this kind of goes into, can you outline the relationship and division of roles between the county forester and the consulting forester in creating and reviewing forest management plans?
Yes.
You, Mike, explain the consulting forester, and Tessa, you explain the county forester. How's that? I'm going to assign you.
Good division of labor.
Okay. I've been both in my career and have worked with both. So the consulting forester is a private contractor licensed with the state based on experience, education, and good standing, who works as an agent for the landowner. And in the case of current use, is most often hired to write the plan meeting current use standards that then gets submitted to the corresponding county forester who works for the state at the Department of Forest Parks and Recreation with responsibility to ensure that those plans meet standards and that practices and activities in the woods meet standards and follow the plan. And that's where Tessa jumps in.
Yeah.
Consultant forester is a private forester in private practice with a relationship with the landowner. County forester also has a relationship with the landowner, but it's different as a public employee.
Yeah. So as a county forester, we are employees of the state. We're not by county. I work for Vermont Department of Forest Parks and Recreation, and we sort of have two main roles. One is to oversee the use value appraisal program, but that role really is reviewing the plans that get submitted to make sure they meet our standards, and then visiting with landowners in the program to make sure they're doing what's asked of them in their plan and in the program, and answering questions they have about it. But we don't write plans for private landowners. We don't oversee harvests for private landowners. That work, the really, really boots on the ground work, that is for private consulting foresters. But county foresters do have another role sort of at the beginning. We're at the end, making sure everything's going the way it should, but we're also there at the beginning. For people with questions, we can help connect you with private consulting foresters and so many other resources that can help you do a lot of that boots on the ground work. We're here to answer questions and talk and have conversations and sort of, I don't know, I see us as like a step you up onto the stewardship ladder and connect you with other resources in a way that private workers might not have the time and resources to do all of that. So I hope that makes sense.
That sounds great. And I would say partly education too, right? That's a big, Tessa comes and teaches at the coverage training. They will host walks in the woods. Hannah Dallas has a number of programs that she's doing in her county right now. And so they provide education within their areas as well for landowners. And it's a fabulous resource. So we're very lucky. We have excellent county foresters. The consulting forester, like Mike said in his plan, you want to interview them. It's a relationship. And so you want to make sure that you feel heard by the person that you hire. There's someone that you're hiring to represent and think about your interests. With that in mind, Michael, there's a question that says, how much does it cost to hire a forester to prepare a forest management plan? Is it based on size, acres? How do I pay you?
Yes, certainly a fair question. A good one, comes up a lot naturally. I think there's a relationship in my practice and in talking with other consultants. There's certainly a relationship with size of the parcel. That said, there are some fixed costs that so even a small parcel, you won't have as much field work to do, but you still have this sort of basic fixed costs of preparing a plan for someone. So it starts with some basic amount and increases with size. I think there's also, fair to say, there's some efficiencies in one project that's on a large property. You're not have to change a whole bunch of small things each time. So I would say, as I understand things these days, it can range from 15 to $35 an acre in the current scheme of things. I think is a fair ballpark. Now, I don't want to get in trouble with all my brothers and sisters out there who may have different rates or approach it differently, but I think that spans what I'm understanding as sort of the normal ballpark for preparation of forest management plans in a current use context. Um, Foresters, but then there's more. So that's the inventory that will get you a conversation. I think it's fair. Most foresters are still willing to meet with a landowner for the first time, take a walk. It's kind of a complimentary, get to know you, hope that you'll hire me kind of conversation, talking about what's possible. Once you make your choice and settle on a forester, they're going to quote you a rate, an hourly, a fixed number estimate for the creation of the plan. That can be pretty straightforward. Then once you start implementing the plan, say you want someone to lay out a logging operation and skid trails and landings and marking timber and scaling timber and creating a prospectus of potential to put out to bid or however it might be handled. Those are going to be another round of discussion about rates. It can be hourly. It can be, again, a fixed rate for a project. I would encourage you, sometimes you'll hear people will take a percentage of the timber. It's generally thought of as bringing up a conflict of interest, that there should be a more of a separation there and not paying the consultant based on how much timber gets cut, although that does still happen. I kind of just tried to touch on the various things that affect cost, and I hope that's helpful to the question asker.
I will add that there are some programs through NRCS that will help cost share the cost of creating that forest management plan. So if you're due for your plan renewal or you don't have a plan for your property, you could talk to your NRCS office and see about the process for applying for funds to help you with that cost share. And our technical assistants can help, give you some more information on that as well. There's a quick question. Oh, go ahead, Tessa. Sorry.
I just want to, on the topic of choosing a forester, working with consultants, just wanted to add really quickly a common misconception that comes up for me is landowners who maybe purchase a parcel or inherit a parcel that already has a management plan written by a forester. Sometimes there's this idea that like, oh, that's the forester who goes with this land, and that's who I have to stay with. And I just want to make sure people know that that's not true. You absolutely can stay with that person who has an existing relationship with the land, and a lot of times that's awesome to do. But if they're not the right fit with you, that's really important. So that it's an open market. You're allowed to shop around and find someone who's a good fit for you. And your county foresters can give you long lists of people who work in our state. So just wanted to make that known.
That's
And
great.
I'll share that the county foresters often get asked, "Hey, Chris has been really helpful. You're amazing, and can you be my forester?" Again, as Tessa said, they can help, and they can advise and educate, but they can't do your inventory, write your plan, or oversee it. The next question is, well, then who should I hire? And they can't tell you who to hire either. But they can, most of them, I think you all maintain geographically based lists, right, of licensed qualified foresters active in your area, and they can share that list of names and contacts with you, and then you can winnow through that to choose the one who works best for you.
That's great. And you should interview more than one to find out who's right for you. Definitely interview, ask for references, ask to see a job. There are a lot of different ways to find the right forester for you. All right. There's a quick question on fire, which I thought was interesting. So I want to share that one. It's a GIS student focusing on land management and wildfire prevention. They observe that fire isn't always considered in planning frameworks. Do you see that as well?
We have less wildfire, for sure, though that may change. There has been surprisingly some incidents of prescribed fire, and so certainly on public lands, the Forest Service, National Forest lands, some on state lands, in certain community types that have evolved with fire, it makes sense. I think there was one private landowner I worked with back in the day when I was a county forester that had interest in doing prescribed fire. Tessa, you're in a part of the state that maybe you do see a little bit more. Do you see fire in private lands plans?
Not often. Yeah, I don't know if I've reviewed a plan in the last couple of years that had fire as a prescription. Maybe a handful mentioned fire as a consideration in terms of their management, but it's uncommon in our state at this point. I think it'd be nice to see a little bit more of it, especially in my area where there are some ecosystems that are, I think, more adapted to fire. We have a lot of oaks, some pitch pine areas, but there's a lot of reasons why it's not really part of our cultural forestry practice at this point, but that might change. So.
All right, so there's another question here. Are the recommendations in a current use stewardship plan prepared by a consulting forester mandatory? Does the landowner have latitude in whether to do and to what degree the recommendations are implemented?
I think that's a Tessa question. I mean, I've got an answer, but I'm going to defer to my colleague from the state.
Yeah. So current use stewardship plan. What I get, there are certain, I think there are always options for the landowner. That's my answer. There are certain requirements of the program. If you have serious AMP issues on your road, we want you to address them. If your stand is overstocked with trees, we want to hear how you're going to open up more space for healthy, vigorous growth of those trees. But how that happens, there's never a single answer. I mean, when it comes to the trees, with roads, it might be more straightforward, but there's never one answer. So it should always be a conversation with your forester. It shouldn't be, this is the one thing you have to do. And I don't want landowners to feel that way. If it's in a plan, you wrote the plan was written, you signed off on it, you agreed to do it. Even within that, it's not written in stone. There's room to amend the plan, to change it over time, because things change. Your feelings, your situation, the market situation, the situation in the forest, things change all the time. And so amending to those changes is absolutely, it's built into the program. So if you want to change something, talk to your forester and or your county forester. But that change, it has to be written, it has to be approved by your county forester, it has to be signed off, and then become part of the new version of the plan. So
really glad you added that last part, Tessa.
Yeah.
Because yes, there's latitude, but once you, the landowner, have signed the plan, and importantly, once your county forester has signed it with their approval, that's the plan. And if you want to change it, you can. They're wonderful about discussing and considering and approving amendments, but there needs to be an amendment. So that just can't be stressed enough that once it's on the paper and it's been written down, that's the plan, and you don't have any latitude except to change it. All right? You can't just go and do whatever you want. If you want to change it and exert that latitude, talk about it with your consulting forester and make sure it gets approved in writing by the county forester.
Thanks for making that super clear.
We want to keep people out of trouble.
Yeah.
They're not here to catch you or trick you or get gotcha. It's really they're very open, and you should make use of these wonderful people we call county foresters.
Thanks. That's all really helpful. Appreciate it.
Right. Yeah, it's hard when you've bought into a property and it already comes with a plan and it may not align with your goals. And so this is a way for you to help create that plan that's still in existence, hasn't expired, to meet your goals. But again, you have to take those necessary steps. You can't just ignore the fact that it's there and has a prescription. The next question, it notes that they've been part of NRCS EQIP program for years, and they're looking into the CSP for their next 6-year contract. And for those of you that don't know all these acronyms, NRCS, Natural Resource Conservation Service, EQIP is, I don't even remember. It's a program that—
Quality Incentive Program.
Thank you. Environmental Quality Incentive Program, and Conservation Stewardship Program is CSP. So there are all these programs. So you don't have to worry about the acronyms. All of the resource professionals, whether they be with NRCS, the state government, your forester, they know the acronyms and they can help you. So they said they're trying to thinking about entering into CSP It's close to being signed. They just shared the proposed treatment map with their forester, and the forester added in 2 sections that were previously treated but aren't on the new map. I'm curious about how to deal with these differing perspectives. It's kind of more of an NRCS thing, I would think.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you're trying to make a map that meets both NRCS and UVA standards. It might be that your forester needs the map to show, all your forest stands, whether or not you're planning to do NRCS activities in them. But otherwise, I'm not quite sure in this case.
And I would say, like, they can actually kind of do a 3-way call with your county forester, your NRCS representative. They work together quite often. And so they can help you figure out those differences to make sure you're meeting all the right requirements. All right, let's see, what else do we have here? I had one, if someone has, this was sent in, if they only have like 8 or 10 acres, can they have a forest management plan?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
You're not with that acreage, just to be clear, you need 25 acres of contiguous forest land to qualify for current use program. So you wouldn't qualify just by acreage, but you can certainly have a plan. And you can even call your county forester to get some advice on how to get started with that. Back in the day, we used to have what we called the backyard forest stewardship program. We said that small forests are a big deal and encouraged people, even on a few acres, to take stock, to write it down, and to create some level of a plan that reflects all that I went through earlier about what do you care about, what's the land capable of, what's the list of activities, the schedule, and can you draw a map of it? And I think even on small ones in particular, it can really bring you closer to your land, and it can become this magical kind of way of codifying your relationship with your land. And it's a really wonderful thing, and I encourage you to do it.
Thanks, Mike. We're at time. We're at 1 o'clock. So I want to thank Mike for his presentation and Tessa for joining us for the question period and for sharing their expertise, all the partners in the program, and you, the landowners of Vermont, for your interest in stewarding your land. We're going to be hosting more of these webinars through this grant program, and hope you'll join us again and share these opportunities with your neighbors and friends. And remember, we're looking to service with technical assistance up to 100 landowners. So go to that website, fill out the little form, and see if we can provide that for you. Again, targeting newer landowners, but put your name in there regardless, and we'll see where you fit. So check out that website, check out the roadmap. The resource guide will be available, and we're really looking forward to helping you engage with your property. And we want to thank you for joining us today.
Thank you all very much. Thanks for caring.
Yeah, thank you. It's great to see how many people show up today with your good questions.